We're on this topic of evaluation. Helen Sanford has submitted a question that I think is very relevant. How do I evaluate whether my public engagement has led to research impact? I think I'll open up this question more widely. Any ideas?
I mean, that's like the $64,000 question.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult question to answer, and in many ways the things that are measurable aren't the things that are necessarily going to always point you towards whether or not your work has had an impact. You can look at things like policy document citations, like patents, when you're talking about technology commercialization or impact upon public policy, but those don't always, a citation doesn't always equal public impacts or any sort of public engagement for that matter. So it's really a matter of, I think, monitoring the conversations that are happening online around your research for sure. I think that's a really important way to go about that. But then another big part of that is working with your university administration to do the harder things, the things that aren't scalable for individual researchers, like public surveys, from what I understand, are one way that folks in the UK, when thinking about the HEFCE, or the REF, excuse me, that they use to understand if the needle has moved at all on certain issues, if the research that's being done at a university has had any sort of impact. The folks at your universities, administrators specifically, who are handling a lot of the REF submissions and who handled it for 2014 and are preparing for 2020, those are folks who are going to be able to really help you understand your options with public engagement activities and how you can actually find evidence of those. So I'd say that the online stuff that's measurable is a part of it, but it's definitely not the whole picture.
I think it's really, really important to be very, as Charlotte mentioned earlier, to first of all have very clear aims and objectives for what you want your research to your engagement to achieve, and to be very clear, as Stephen mentioned, about the audiences that you're and the stakeholder groups that you're intending to work with. So if you have clear aims and objectives, and you know which audiences, and you know what kind of impact you're aiming for, is it a social impact, is it a change in understanding, or then you'll be able to, once you've set that framework up, it becomes much easier to gauge by evaluation, whether that's by survey or interview or whatever methods you are using to estimate your impact. Setting out a clear frame makes it much easier to evaluate the impacts that you have had on people or on society or whatever.
Charlotte, I was wondering if you could sort of give an early career researcher background to someone that's looking to evaluate public engagement. Is there an idea that that early career researchers are building these sort of frameworks?
Yeah, I think what's important, just building on what's been said, I think all of that is completely relevant. And also, if you do want to turn that public engagement into impact, just being really sure that you're talking to people and getting advice on that, so talking to research support officers, impact officers if you have them, and making sure that right from the start you're measuring your outcomes in the right way and that you're capturing the right data. Obviously that's important for everyone, but I think particularly for ECRs, because there's nothing worse than sort of getting to the end of the project and realising that you haven't been collecting the right kind of data. So I think that's the only thing that I would add in particular there, is just to make sure that you're aware of what you need to be capturing right from the start as well.
So my comment would be agreeing again with everything that's been said, but also to think about looking outside of academia for some of the expertise on evaluating public engagement. So broadcasters, for example, the BBC have huge expertise in evaluating the impact that their programming, both on radio and TV, has, and I think that's very relevant to understanding the impact of many social media channels, as well as broadcast, traditional broadcast channels. And also places like museums and science centres are really leaders at understanding how to evaluate public, face-to-face events and activities and exhibitions and things like that. So I think there's a huge amount of expertise out there, both within and outside universities, and it's important to tap into that expertise as much as possible.